Hey guys, we are going to make my ultimate recipe for mutia today, and they are absolutely outstanding. I promise you. This is how I've been making them for years. This is how my mum taught me to make them, and they are so good. And it's such a forgiving recipe as well, because you can raid the fridge and use up whatever vegetable scraps you have lying around. My favorite addition to these steamed dumplings is leftover rice, and that is key for excellent binding and a really lovely soft finish as well. And I have a ton of tips and tricks to share with you along the way for this one. I've measured out all of the ingredients that we're going to need to make our Dudhi Muthiya today, and as you can see, the star of the show is right there in its big quantity, and that is the Dudhi or Bottlegourd, and you can find that in most supermarkets these days, or at your local market or your local Indian shop, and they will definitely have that. It's a popular one. It's kind of like a courgette, so if you can't manage to find the Bottlegourd or Dudhi in your local shop, then go ahead and just add in some grated courgettes or zucchini for my American friends. I also like to add a little bit of colour to my mutia, so I'm going to add some grated carrots and some onions and a little bit of garlic as well for that lovely garlicky flavour. And then moving on to the main body of the ingredients for these mutia. So moving on to my dry ingredients, in my bowl I've measured out some chickpea flour and some whole wheat plain flour, and that is the same kind that I use to make rotli. You can use that kind to make puris and thepla as well. It's just your whole wheat chapati atta, so use that. It's perfect for this recipe. And then in my little bowl here as well, I've got some semolina, and that is just fine semolina, and I'm going to mix all of these together. Now in my bowl here I have some cooked leftover rice. Now this is cold, it's been sitting in the fridge since yesterday. I cooked this yesterday, and it is jasmine rice actually, because yesterday we had tofu curry for dinner and I made some extra rice because I knew I was going to make these mutiyas today. So if you want to do this, then if you're having rice any other day, just cook it and make a bit extra, keep it in the fridge, and then you can make these mutia the next day once it's cold. And as you can see, it's kind of like stuck together and starchy, and that is perfect for these mutiyas. And you can use any rice for these mutia as well. It doesn't have to be jasmine rice. I've just got this one. Traditionally I would use a long grain basmati rice for this, but really it doesn't matter. Just use any rice that you have left over in the fridge. Masalas wise, we're gonna go really simple on this. So here we have some chili powder and some turmeric, and then I have salt, sugar, and then some baking powder and some baking soda as well. And that is just gonna make these mutiyas nice and light so they're not stodgy, and once they've been steamed they kind of have a little bit of a rise to them as well, because they will rise and puff up a bit in the steamer. I also have a little bit of oil here in my small bowl, and that is just rapeseed oil. You can use any oil you like, sunflower, vegetable, whatever you can get your hands on. Just make sure that it's not olive oil. And finally in my little plate here I have all of the ingredients for the vaghar or the tempering or the tadka, whatever you want to call it. I've got some oil here. This is just rapeseed oil, and then I'm going to crackle in some mustard seeds, some sesame seeds, some asafoetida, and I just have some curry leaves here. And as you can see, these are ones that I have frozen previously and taken out. They're just starting to defrost now as well, and they are perfect. Their colour has been retained really nicely, and if you want some tips and tricks on how to freeze your curry leaves, then just go and check out my Instagram highlights, and I have a whole tutorial on how to do that at home. So I've mixed my chickpea flour and my whole wheat chapati atta in this big bowl here. You're going to need a big bowl, so grab the biggest one you've got, and I'm going to pour in my semolina. This is just coarse semolina, as you can see, and all of this just needs to lightly be mixed together. Now I'm just going to add in all of my dry ingredients, so my chili powder, turmeric, baking powder, baking soda, salt and sugar, and those are all just going to get mixed in really nicely. grab myself a spoon and just give that a little mix as well. And then we're going to go in and just dump in our rice. So my rice is mixed in, and I'm just going to go in with clean hands and gently kind of rub it so that the rice kind of breaks up and gets coated in all of that flour. And you want to kind of mush it up, not completely, but just a little bit, so that you're gonna get that lovely binding and great texture in your mutia. And that really does come from that kind of squished up rice and those mixed flours as well. And this is just going to be so delicious. So just keep going. It'll kind of look a bit breadcrumby, as if you were making like an apple crumble or a short crust pastry, or if you were doing morn for making homemade samosa pastry. So just keep going. And that is looking good to me. So now we are ready to add in all of our mixed vegetables. All of the vegetables are in the bowl now. I've added the dudhi, some garlic, some onion and some carrots, and now I'm just going to start squidging this together with my hands. And we don't want to add any water to this at this stage. We want to squeeze all of those vegetables to release all of those natural juices in there, and that is what's going to help us bind these mutia together without having to add any additional water. Similarly to if you were making like pakoras or like onion bhaji, you can kind of squeeze them like this and they will release all of that natural water inside them, so that you're not adding like a ton of water and then ending up with a really runny batter. And the rice is going to help in this binding as well significantly. So just keep going, knead it with clean hands. My dough has been nicely mixed, and as you can see, it's starting to come together. There are some like patches of flour here and there, and that's fine. That's all going to get mixed in a minute. But we're just going to add some of the final ingredients. The first being a little bit of oil, and that is going to keep these nice and moist and soft, and just a squeeze of lemon. This is a fairly big lemon that I'm using, so if you want the full measurements, just head on over to the recipe at the end of this tutorial and I will share that with you. Now I'm just going to pick this little seed out here. So I'm just going to go in one more time with my hands to bring this all together now. It's got a little bit of moisture from the vegetables and the oil that I put in just then. Now your hands are really the best tool for this. You can use a spoon or a spatula or something for this as well if you want, but you really want to get in there and just mix it and not be afraid of like getting your hands dirty with this recipe. Just go ahead. It's a really nice dish to cook for the family and for friends. It's really great with chai on a Sunday afternoon. They're great for breakfast. So enjoy making these. It's something that I grew up with and something my mum always used to make when I'd go visiting, and I have some of the best memories eating these mutiyas with chai. So the next step is to shape our mutia so that they are ready for the steamer. So the first thing we need to do is grease our little trays that go inside our steamer. I've got a 3-tier steamer, so I'm going to grease 3 of these trays, and I've just put a little bit of oil on there. Not olive oil, just some rapeseed oil is fine, any kind of cooking oil. And what I'm going to do is then just grease my hands. So I'm going to take a bit of oil in my hands and just grease them so that my hands don't stick to this mutia mixture. And then what I need to do is just grab a bit of this mixture, kind of make it into a ball in my hands, and the oil is really going to help you kind of stop that from sticking to your hands as well. You don't want to make these too thick, you don't want to make them too thin. Just like a little log like this is perfect. So what we need to do is just shape this. You can use the tray, and this looks pretty perfect to me. My little tins are quite small here, my trays, so just use your own judgment in terms. So again, all I need to do is take my clean hands, pop a bit of oil on them, grab a bit of my mutia mixture, and then just make it into a nice little ball. The oil is really going to help that not stick to my hands, and then just roll it kind of into like a long cylinder or sausage shape, and then just pop it down on your tray. You can kind of reshape it a little bit in your tray. They don't have to be perfect, remember as well, like these are gonna rise a bit in the steamer, and we are also going to cut them into little cylinders afterwards, like cut them into little slices, so they really don't have to be perfect. This is looking good to me. They're kind of the same thickness. Now I'm just popping my mutiyas into my steamer now, and as you can see I've left a fair bit of space in between each one because they are going to rise a little bit and I don't want them touching each other. So the best thing to do is to leave some gaps so that they have a bit of space to rise, and my steamer has been preheating now for a couple of minutes. So once the water is boiling, like I've got some water in the bottom of that steamer, it's just enough so that it doesn't touch the base of this mold, and I'm just going to pop this in here and stick my lid on, and that is going to cook over a high heat for about 20 minutes. My mutiyas have been steaming for about 20 minutes now, and they are now ready to check. So I'm just very carefully going to loosen this lid, and remember to always use a tea towel or something to open your lids because these things get really hot. You just got to be really careful. So let me just wangle this guy open. So this is really hot and steamy, and they are looking quite good to me. All I need to do to check these for readiness, to make sure that they are cooked all the way through, is to test them in the same way as you would test a cake. So I've got a wooden cocktail skewer here, and I'm just going to poke this into the center, and if it comes out fairly clean with maybe just a few of the little crumbs attached, that means that these are perfect. I also want to say that if your steamer is quite small, then you might need to do this in a couple of batches, and that is absolutely fine as well. All you'll need to do is just grease up a few more trays, or if you don't have any more trays, you can just slip these off of these trays and put them on another plate to cool down, and then just grease these trays in the same way to steam the second batch of your mutiya. All you need to do is just make sure that you've got enough water in the bottom of your steamer so that doesn't kind of dry out. You don't want the water to kind of evaporate away in there. You need enough water so that the base doesn't burn. So what I'm going to do now is just allow these to cool down completely. You can even leave them overnight. That's even better, and that's really going to help you slice these up into neat rounds later on. So my mutiyas are lovely and cool now, and they've firmed up just a little bit, so I've popped them on the chopping board, and what I'm going to do is just cut this now into logs, and just use a sharp knife to do this. And you'll see these are cutting really beautifully, and you want to cut them into kind of like 2 centimeter pieces or so, not too thick, not too thin. And as you can see, it's got all of our lovely vegetables and rice in there. We're just gonna cut this up, try and get them as even as you can, and as I mentioned, you want to make sure these are completely cool before you even try to do this. I'm just about to start my boghar for these mutiya now. So to my pan, I'm going to add some oil, using rapeseed oil. Now my oil is really hot, so I'm just going to add in my mustard seeds, and they are going to start crackling any minute now. Let them splutter and pop away, and once that noise of the crackling subsides, that's when we are ready to add the rest of our ingredients. Now my mustard seeds have stopped sizzling, so I'm going to add in my sesame seeds, and I like to add lots and lots of sesame seeds to this tadka. It just makes these mutiyas so delicious and gives them a really nice toasty flavour. And almost immediately I'm going to add my curry leaves and a little bit of asafoetida or hing. And this is all just going to kind of sizzle up in my pan. Now, to this tadka, I'm also going to add a little pinch of methi. I'm adding kasuri methi. That is completely optional and something that I like to do. Now the next thing I'm going to do with this vokar is not massively conventional, but something that I like to do to keep these mutiyas really lovely and moist, and that is to add a little bit of water to my vokar. Now I have switched this off and this has been cooling down probably for about a minute, so it's not like blisteringly hot, because we all know hot water and oil don't mix. So just add a little bit of water to this vokar, and then when you are gonna put your mutia in, this is gonna just kind of soak up and make them really nice and moist, so that they're not like dry and sticking in your mouth. Like, this is a really nice tip for getting like really lovely, like soft homemade mutia. So once this comes to the boil, we're gonna add all of our mutia into the pan all at once. And these are now gonna cook in this pan for probably about 10 minutes until each side is really nice and crispy. So you don't want to be stirring it a ton, because that is going to make these little nuggets, they're quite soft, but they're not like completely unbreakable. So what you need to do is make sure that you are turning them not too frequently. Now these mutia just need a quick toss in this vokar, and it's going to soak up all of that lovely water that we added and all of the flavours of that tadka. And you want to be really careful with this. You don't want them to break, so just use like a rubber spatula like I am here, or something wooden, and just be really delicate with it and just give them a toss. And as they cook, they're going to start browning on the bottom. As that water starts evaporating and the oil is left, these are going to start to become really nice and crispy on the surface. So just let them get there, don't stir them around too much. Once they get to a stage where they're coated, you kind of just want to leave them to do their thing, and they'll become really nice and crisp on that base there. It's been about 8 or 9 minutes since I last tossed these mutiyas, and as you can see, and actually hear, you can hear this, most of the water has now evaporated, which means that these mutiyas have been frying a little bit on the bottom and becoming really nice and golden and crispy. So what I'm going to do is just get my spatula in there and just give them a nice little turn. And can you see, like, these are starting to go really lovely and golden brown. Those sesame seeds are toasting up nicely. And really, we want to be gentle with these. We don't want to kind of toss them and break them. We just want to give them another turn so that they are browning nice and evenly. And can you see, like, these lovely crispy bits that we've got now? And that is the rice and all of the spices and the tadka and the mustard seeds, and these are just glorious. These mutiyas have been cooking now for a total of about 15 minutes, and they are so delicious and golden on the bottoms, as you can see here, and they are absolutely perfect for eating immediately with some masala chai or some achar masala or a little bit of plain yogurt. You can dress these however you like, but you are gonna love them. So I hope you give these a go. Now, what you can do as well is, if you have any of these mutiyas left over, then cool them and pop them into a little freezer safe container. Just a handful will do. And what we are going to do next week is do a recipe using these mutiyas. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what it is, but if you have got time to make these, then definitely make sure that you have a little bit of these left over. Pop them in the freezer, and then I will show you how to use them in a spectacular new recipe next week.